Hello, everybody. It's Zach of Dark Con Entertainment, and I just got done with watching Black Widow as of now from the theater, and I had some thoughts that I wanted to share about it. First off, I want to say that one of the parts that I like most about this movie is that a good portion of it did not feel like a typical Marvel movie. Like, I do not know quite how to fully explain it, but definitely the beginning portion. The beginning portion wasn't like overly uplifting and lighthearted, and it wasn't overly flashy with some high budget, expensive CG effects and whatnot. I mean, I presume that there was some CG that got into it. I mean, Alexei, the Red Guardian, as he is later revealed to be, is on the wing of a plane. So I get, obviously there's some amount of CG effects that went into the beginning, but for the most part, the beginning part, it was more nitty gritty and kind of dark, honestly, and it took its time with the build up and whatnot. Like, you had these two girls, that being like Natasha and Amara. I can't remember what the name of the sister's character is, or of what her name is. You know, Black Widow's sister, Scarlet, Natasha Romanoff's sister. I'm kind of drawing some blanks here. But anyway, so I definitely liked the beginning and throughout most of it, of how it did not feel like a typical Marvel movie. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't like expecting a whole lot from this movie. I thought it was gonna be a little bit worse. I mean, or at least I was bracing myself anyways. I guess I did not expect that it was gonna be that bad, but ultimately I will say that there was some good things to go with this movie. So there is that. I do say that I liked Scarlett Johansson's portrayal of Black Widow. Like, she continues to shine and give like a consistent portrayal of her own character, of the personality of Black Widow, as she has done in past movies. And her sister makes a good character to bounce off of, but the interactions that them two have with each other. I will say that I was a bit confused with the why that them two had to. And by the way, spoiler alert, everybody. I'm not going to save y'all from spoilers. I mean, does spoilers even matter? We all know that by the end of this movie, or after of when this movie takes place, that Black Widow is going to die anyway. So it doesn't matter by the end of it. But anyway, as I was saying, I was a little bit confused as to why that the two sisters had to fight each other. Like, I guess one of them expected the other, or they both expected each other to be brainwashed, have the brainwash serum or whatever it was from Dreykov and his espionage organization. And so that's the biggest reason why they were suspicious of one another and started fighting each other. Though that wasn't exactly made clear and solidified as to why they're fighting with each other. That's just mostly my own theory. So ultimately, points deducted for that little bit of weirdness. I guess they were just that desperate to try and have a sister-on-sister fight scene go on. It's whatever. I will say that Dreykov, or no, not Dreykov, Alexei, the Red Guardian, there was points that I thought that he was going to be a pretty good character. Like, in the beginning scene, he was part of the reason as to why that the beginning opening of this movie was so good. It was as good as it was, is because of the way that they portrayed Alexei. He was like, when he first enters in the house, when they go to sit down for dinner, he is like rather reserved and is not wanting to reveal too much to the little girls. That this being like Natasha and her sister, like 20 years before the events of Captain America Civil War. So of course they're a lot younger, because the beginning scene takes place with a bit of a flashback scene, just to put things into context. And then after that, it's pretty much present day, or not really so much present day. It's right after Civil War and before Infinity War. But anyway, but with the beginning scene, he was so reserved and was not one to so as much scare off the little girls to frighten them or whatever, but he was like really trying to contain himself. How do I put it? He was really trying to prevent from scaring the girls, but at the same time, he knew that some stuff was going down. He knew a whole lot more than what the girls did about what had to be done. And so that just gave him a little bit this glum, depressed sort of look. And he was part of the reason as to why that beginning scene was so good. And when they reintroduced his character, when they shown him in the prison right there, he was still, it was a pretty good reintroduction as well. The way that he was just winning the arm wrestling competitions with all the other inmates because he himself has a super soldier serum infused into him, kind of the same lines of Captain America, and he keeps on going on about how he had some rivalry or whatever with Captain America, which wasn't really revealed in other movies at all, which I kind of wish that there was, so as to build up for Alexei the Red Guardian a whole lot better, but unfortunately we did not get it. So there is that area of where that Red Guardian sort of falls flat in this movie. But when they reintroduced him in the prison scene, he was still tough right there, but it's like going more and more closer to the end of when that he becomes less serious and not as much butt kicking as he could have potentially been. There's a fly flying around my head, excuse me. But he became sort of more reminiscent of Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Like, you know how in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, Drax was a whole lot butt-kicking, and in the sequel to Guardians of the Galaxy, Drax did not do a whole lot of butt-kicking. He was just mostly there for emotional support. Get away, fly. And just for goofy laughs mostly. But even then, even Drax from Guardians Volume 2 was a whole lot more endearing, or dignified, that's the word. Even he was a whole lot more dignified in that movie than Alexei the Red Guardian in this movie, in Black Widow, that is. Like, I was expecting him to kick a little bit more butt towards the final part, the final act of the movie, but no, he doesn't, so that's a little bit of a letdown, honestly. And the villain, he wasn't anything too special, or he did not bring a whole lot to the table as far as villains go, because he was rather underwhelming, actually. Even by Marvel standards, he was a pretty underwhelming villain. I will say that the one impressive thing about Dreykov, that's the name of the villain, he was the guy who was heading the Black Widow project or whatever for his own selfish gain of trying to basically pull the strings of world leaders and whatnot through espionage so that he could essentially gain control of the world through an indirect sort of under the table kind of way with all the Black Widows. And by the way, when I say Black Widows, that's basically what all the agents are. That's why that Black Widow is called Black Widow, because she's the only Black Widow that escaped of the Red Room, escaped Dreykov's organization. But they're all Black Widows. All the female agents under Dreykov, they're all called Black Widows, essentially. What was I gonna say? Yes, so Dreykov, the only thing that was really interesting about him was like going towards the end, there is a little bit of an analogy, a sort of theme going on about abusive relationships. I just got done with watching Critical Drinker's review about this, so I kind of credit him to helping jog what I was thinking about this. But I thought, when I first watched the movie here, I was rather impressed with what they were showing at the final act there, of when that Dreykov was basically beating the shit out of Black Widow, and Black Widow could not retaliate because I guess she had some drug, or she was sniffing some kind of pheromone off of Dreykov that prevented her from committing any violence on Dreykov. And so Dreykov was just landing blows on Black Widow, and then finally when Natasha breaks her own nose so that she could essentially no longer smell the pheromones and no longer be under his control, more or less. He wasn't under his full control, but nonetheless, so that she could, like, retaliate against him, punch him in the face and whatnot. as soon as she done that, he was no longer intimidating. He no longer had any sort of influence over her. Like, that was part of the analogy for abusive relationships, of where, oh yeah, you'd have to like watch Critical Drinker's review of Black Widow, because he makes a very good point on that. It was rather impressive, and I credit him for sort of pointing that out. And I just liked of how that Black Widow was able to like tank those punches from Dreykov. Overall, what do I have to say about the movie? And another thing that I liked about the end of the movie was when they gone skydiving out of the airbase. Like, the Red Room, Dreykov's organization, is like in the sky in this sort of hovering air station or whatever. It's somewhat like the helicarrier for the Avengers, except it's more stationary than the typical helicarrier is. I think that's what it's called, if I remember correctly, is the helicarrier. But anyway, when they gone like when they blew up the air station and they were like falling to the ground, that was rather intense. Just the idea that Natasha was just free falling most of the time. She did not even have a parachute on. She was able to break her fall by grabbing onto first, the biggest reason as to why that she jumped off in the first place was because that her sister, I wish I could remember her freaking name, was that her sister fell off and she was trying to get her a parachute to save her life. And then she had to jump off of her sister because Dreykov's daughter, again, spoilers right here, but I'm not holding back on spoilers. Dreykov's daughter, who is ultimately the person behind the mask, that masked figure, brainwashed assassin sort of dude, is not a dude, is a female. It's Dreykov's daughter, all grown up, basically. And so Dreykov's daughter is just in hot pursuit of them two, trying to kill Black Widow. And as soon as she gets close, Natasha has to let go of her sister and is free falling again, but this time she's like going to fisticuffs in the air with Dreykov's daughter, and finally she gets Dreykov's daughter. I can't even remember her name. I think it was Antonia or something like that. I'm pretty sure that Antonia was the name. Antonia's parachute deploys, and that is the final breaking for the final thing that breaks her fall, to where that she ultimately doesn't die. But throughout most of the portion there, she's just free falling, and it's just rather intense to look at, especially when you watch this in the theater. But the end, the biggest I say that there is nothing like too impressive with the whole Antonia plot line. Part of the plot for this movie is that Natasha ends up feeling rather guilty for what she thinks killing Dreykov's daughter. An innocent little girl. She just saw an innocent little girl, but she knew that she had to blow up the room and ultimately to kill Dreykov, who she thought was in the room, but ultimately he wasn't in the room, and only Antonia was in the room. So basically she thought that she only killed an innocent little girl. And once the masked assassin is revealed to be Antonia, Natasha feels guilty for what she did, and she wants to sort of redeem herself by trying to free Antonia, break her of Dreykov's hold on to her that he had. So there's nothing real special about that, but by the time that they all fall to the ground, that Antonia and Natasha fall to the ground, she ends up waking her up, given the red serum that breaks the brainwashing formula or whatever that Dreykov has on all the Black Widows. After the original Black Widow, Natasha escaped and defected from the organization. All the Black Widows were given a brainwash serum, that including Antonia, and by the time that Black Widow on the ground after the air station was destroyed, gives the red serum, whatever it's called, so as to break Antonia's mind control. It's just, she feels redeemed. There is nothing too special or too grand about it. There's nothing too grand about the ending at all, actually. One other thing that I will say is that I kind of liked the British Indian character that they had that was basically Natasha's arms dealer dude. He was a kind of interesting character to see banter with both Natasha and her sister at one point as well. What else do I have to say about this movie? I think that's about it. All in all, I have to say 6 out of 10 probably. It wasn't too memorable, and it ultimately did not do anything too special as far as Marvel storytelling goes. And by the way, this is not me trying to be biased against Marvel movies. I will admit that I have been feeling kind of burnt out on Marvel movies, but if you were to ask me how would I rate some of the other past Marvel movies, I would say that Guardians of the Galaxy, both 1 and 2, 9 out of 10. I'd give Captain America Civil War an 8 out of 10 at least, if not a 9 out of 10. I'd give Infinity War a 10 out of 10, and I'd give Endgame either a 9 or even a 10 out of 10, something like that. So I'm not particularly biased against Marvel movies. I'm not just rating Black Widow a 6 out of 10 because of the I'm getting kind of burnt out of Marvel movies. I just feel like that there was nothing too special done in this movie. They just ultimately they tried and wanted to give a swan song off to Black Widow, the Black Widow, but it did not work out too well in the end. Heck, they even tried to do like a end credits scene, like, you know, the typical Marvel after credits scene of when that Natasha's sister goes visiting her grave. But the biggest thing that makes that scene sort of fall flat is because there's this one other female character. I can't even remember what her name is, but she's some kind of contact for espionage agents. She gives out a piece of, she actually shows of what Natasha's sister's next target is, and it is Hawkeye, because they are pinning him blame as to why that Natasha is dead in Endgame. Of course, they were going to do that. He was the last one to be there to witness her death, so of course facts are going to get mixed up to where that people start blaming Hawkeye for Black Widow's death. But she goes visiting Natasha's grave, and the one contact lady, she ends up blowing her nose in a sort of typical Marvel comedy slapstick, and it was really not that well placed. I was not impressed. I just facepalm of cringe right there. So it kind of ruined the emotional moment of that graveyard scene. So ultimately, that's all I have to say. Yeah, it wasn't a very successful ending swan song for Black Widow. But if you were to watch this movie in the chronological order, like if you watch this movie, Black Widow, in between Civil War and Infinity War, then maybe it would work out better. But because of the order that these movies were actually released, Black Widow did not do a whole lot. But anyway, I've went on too long as it already is, and this fly is still not leaving me alone. Y'all have a good night. I say go ahead and watch it, but don't expect too much out of it anyways. Good night and God bless.